Let me ask you something. Have you ever agreed to something and then, only later, wondered why you said yes? Maybe it was signing up for something you didn't really need, or helping someone even when you didn't have the time, or saying yes to a friend's request when a part of you wanted to say no. It's like your mouth answered before your brain caught up. And here's the crazy part. That wasn't an accident. That was your mind running on autopilot. And there's a name for the trick that triggered it. Once you understand it, you'll start to see it everywhere. In sales calls, in conversations, in politics, even in your own relationships. It's subtle, it's powerful, and if you learn to use it the right way, it can help you inspire, influence, and lead without ever forcing anyone. Our brain is a pattern-making machine. We like things to match. We like to see ourselves as consistent. If we say we believe something, we want our actions to match those beliefs. Why? Because if they don't, we feel uncomfortable. It's a deep, almost primal discomfort called cognitive dissonance. We'll do almost anything to avoid it. And this is where the mind trick comes in. It's called the consistency principle. And it's one of the most reliable ways to get a yes from someone without them even realizing what's happening. Here's the basic idea. If you can get someone to agree to something small, they are much more likely to agree to something bigger later. It sounds simple, but the effect is huge. Let's start with a story. In the 1960s, psychologists Jonathan Friedman and Scott Fraser did a strange little experiment in a quiet California neighborhood. They went door to door asking residents to put a big, ugly, "Drive carefully" billboard in their front yard. Most people said no surprise there. Who wants a giant sign ruining their lawn? But here's the twist. Before asking some of the residents about the big billboard, they first asked them a much smaller favor. They said, "Would you be willing to place a small postcard in your window that says 'Drive carefully'?" Almost everyone said yes to the postcard. It was tiny, harmless, easy. Then 2 weeks later, the researchers came back. They asked the same people if they'd be willing to put up the huge billboard. And guess what? Those who had agreed to the tiny postcard were 4 times more likely to say yes to the massive, ugly sign in their yard. Why? Because their brain thought, "I already agreed to support this cause. I'm the kind of person who helps with safe driving campaigns. If I say no now, it won't match who I said I was before." That's the consistency principle in action. A small yes leads to a bigger yes, not because of logic, but because of identity. When you say yes to something, even something small, your brain doesn't just see it as an isolated event, it starts to see it as part of who you are. And once your identity is involved, breaking that pattern feels wrong. Think about the last time you subscribed to a service after a free trial. On day 1, you didn't think of yourself as a customer. You were just trying it. But by the end of the week, you'd already used it. Maybe recommended it to someone. Maybe customized your account. Without realizing it, you'd started to see yourself as a user. So when the trial ended, you didn't want to cancel. It didn't feel consistent with who you'd become over the past 7 days. That's not persuasion, that's psychology. This principle is everywhere. A charity might first ask you to sign a petition before they ask for a donation. A fitness trainer might get you to commit to one easy workout session before selling you a long-term plan. Even in relationships, someone might ask for a tiny favor before making a much bigger request. And because you already said yes once, you feel more inclined to say it again. But here's the part most people don't realize. It's not just about the other person asking, it's about how we frame things to ourselves. Sometimes we trap ourselves with our own consistency. You tell yourself, "I'm the kind of person who never quits." And that's great when it helps you push through a hard goal. But it can also keep you stuck in situations that aren't good for you. Jobs, relationships, habits, because quitting would feel inconsistent. Our need to be consistent can make us powerful, but it can also make us predictable. Marketers know this. That's why they'll start with something that feels completely harmless. "Would you like to join our free newsletter?" Sure, why not? A week later they ask, "Want to check out our premium guide?" And now your brain says, "Well, I'm already part of this community. I've already benefited from it, so why not?" You've already labeled yourself as someone who's into this. And that label makes you more likely to keep saying yes. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. This principle works better when the first yes is public or visible. If you tell someone else you'll do something, the pressure to follow through skyrockets. Why? Because now it's not just about staying consistent in your own eyes, it's about staying consistent in theirs. That's why accountability groups work so well for fitness goals. You're not just committing to yourself, you're committing to everyone watching you. I want you to imagine this scenario. You're at a friend's housewarming party. They casually ask, "Hey, do you think supporting local businesses is important?" You nod and say, "Absolutely." 2 days later, they message you, "Hey, there's this small local cafe trying to get more customers. Would you be willing to come by this Saturday?" That earlier yes is now echoing in your mind. You're the kind of person who supports local businesses, right? It would feel weird to refuse now. That's the trick, one that works quietly, invisibly, and effectively. But this isn't just a tool for sales or favors. You can use it to change your own life. Want to develop a new habit? Start with a ridiculously small commitment. Don't decide to run 5 miles every day. Decide to put on running shoes every morning. Once you've taken that small step, your brain starts seeing you as someone who works out. And that identity will pull you into bigger actions without as much resistance. The consistency principle is like planting a seed. The first yes is the seed, and each action that follows is water and sunlight. Before you know it, you've grown something much bigger than that tiny initial agreement. The same works in reverse. If you start saying yes to things that don't align with your values, even in small ways, you might end up in a place you never intended to be. That's why awareness matters. So the next time you find yourself agreeing to something instantly, pause and ask, am I saying yes because I truly want to, or because I'm trying to stay consistent with a past decision? That single moment of reflection can save you from a lot of automatic yeses you might regret later. And when you're the one making the request, remember, start small. Help someone make that first easy commitment, and the bigger commitments will often follow naturally. Think about this. Every big yes you've ever given probably started with a much smaller one. You didn't just wake up one day and decide to take a certain job, start a relationship, or join a club. It began with a conversation, an invitation, or a little step you didn't think twice about. And that's the beauty and danger of the consistency principle. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It works in the background, quietly building a bridge from one small choice to a much bigger one. There's another famous experiment that shows just how deep this runs. It's called the foot in the door technique, and it's been tested over and over again. One version went like this. Researchers called homeowners and asked them to answer a few simple questions about household products they used. That was it. Harmless, quick, no strings attached. A few days later, the same homeowners got another call, this time asking if a team of researchers could come into their homes for 2 hours to inspect all the products in their cupboards. Now, if you think about it, letting strangers into your home for hours is a big request. But here's what's fascinating. People who had answered the short survey earlier were far more likely to agree to the long, inconvenient visit later. Why? Because they had already said yes to helping with the research. They had labeled themselves, at least in their minds, as helpful or willing to participate. Saying no now would feel like breaking that self-image. Once you start noticing this pattern, you see it everywhere. Political campaigns don't start by asking you to donate money. They start by asking if you believe in a cause. Salespeople don't start by asking you to buy. They start by asking you to just take a quick look. Recruiters don't start by asking if you're ready to switch jobs. They start by asking if you're open to exploring opportunities. Each little yes is a stepping stone to the bigger one they actually want. And this doesn't only happen when someone else is influencing you, it happens when you influence yourself. For example, imagine you're trying to read more books this year. If you set the goal to read for an hour every day, right from the start, it feels like a mountain to climb. But if you commit to reading just 1 page before bed, something changes. That tiny yes doesn't feel threatening. You can do it without resistance. And once you've done it, you'll often think, well, I'm already here. I might as well keep going. That's the power of consistency. It makes momentum inevitable. But there's another side to this coin. Sometimes we use consistency to justify things we don't actually want or need anymore. You've seen people stay in bad jobs because I've already been here for 5 years, so I might as well stick it out. You've seen people keep paying for a subscription they barely use because I've been a member since the beginning. You've seen people continue relationships that no longer bring joy because we've been together so long, it would feel wrong to walk away. This is the trap. The same mechanism that pushes us toward growth can also keep us locked in place. So how do you use the consistency principle without falling victim to it? First, you have to become aware of it. Notice when your yes is automatic. Ask yourself, am I saying this to match who I said I was before, or because it truly fits who I am now? Second, when you're on the influencing side, be mindful of the outcome you're leading someone toward. If you're helping them make positive changes, like building healthier habits or committing to their goals, this principle can be a powerful ally. But if it's leading them somewhere they don't genuinely want to be, it crosses the line into manipulation. Let me give you a story from everyday life. A friend of mine, let's call him David, wanted to start running in the mornings. But every time he told himself, I'll run 5 kilometers, he'd hit snooze instead. So one day he changed his approach. He told himself, all I have to do is put on my running shoes and step outside. That's it. No promise to run, no pressure to push himself, just step outside in running shoes. And here's what happened. Once he was out there, he thought, well, I'm already here. I might as well jog a little. That jog turned into a full run more often than not. Why? Because the first yes, to simply put on the shoes, created the momentum for the bigger yes. That's the consistency principle at its purest form. You can apply this to almost anything. Want to start meditating? Commit to sitting quietly for 30 seconds. Want to start writing? Commit to typing a single sentence. Want to save money? Commit to putting away $1 a day. The point is to lower the first step so much that saying yes feels effortless. Then, let consistency do the rest. Of course, people who understand this principle on a deeper level can make it even more persuasive. They don't just get you to say yes to any small thing, they get you to say yes to something that shapes your identity. A coach might not ask, will you try this workout? They might ask, do you see yourself as someone who takes care of their health? A nonprofit might not ask, will you donate? They might ask, do you believe children deserve a chance at education? Once you say yes to an identity-based question, you've planted a powerful seed. Your future actions will often grow to match that identity. There's another reason this works so well. Our brain hates wasted effort. Once we've invested time, energy, or even emotion into something, we want to follow through so that investment doesn't feel wasted. This is sometimes called the sunk cost fallacy, and it's like the consistency principle's close cousin. Together, they make it incredibly hard to back out of something once we've started, even if starting was just a tiny step. So how do you defend yourself from being influenced without realizing it? One trick is to create a pause between the small yes and the big yes. If someone asks you for something bigger right after you've agreed to something small, take a breath. Don't answer immediately. That pause is your shield. It breaks the automatic link between the two yeses and gives you space to think. And here's the beautiful part. Once you understand this principle, you can use it not just to get others to agree, but to help them commit to things they actually want to do. You can help a friend stick to their studies by first asking them to commit to a tiny daily review. You can help a family member start eating healthier by first asking them to swap out one snack a day. You can help yourself reach almost any goal by starting with a step so small it feels silly. But the real magic? Over time, those small, consistent actions become part of your identity. And when your identity changes, your decisions change automatically. You don't have to force yourself to run, you're a runner. You don't have to push yourself to read, you're a reader. You don't have to remind yourself to save, you're a saver. The first yes might feel tiny, but it can completely rewrite the story you tell yourself about who you are. Nowhere is the consistency principle more visible than in relationships. Think about the early stages of dating. It often starts with tiny yeses, saying yes to a coffee, yes to a walk in the park, yes to a phone call that lasts a little longer than planned. Each small yes deepens the connection, making the bigger yeses, like meeting family, making future plans, or even moving in together, feel natural. These aren't random decisions. They're the product of a chain of consistent actions that slowly shape how we see ourselves in the context of that relationship. You're no longer just you, you're us. And once us becomes part of your identity, your decisions will bend to keep it intact. This is why breakups can feel so disorienting. It's not just losing the person, it's breaking the chain of consistent yeses that defined who you were with them. Every memory, every shared plan, every inside joke, it's like pulling threads from a sweater. The structure that felt whole begins to unravel. That's the emotional cost of consistency. The deeper the chain, the harder it is to break without feeling like you're breaking yourself. The same thing happens in careers. Most people don't start in a job thinking, I'll stay here for 15 years. They say yes to the interview, yes to the offer, yes to learning the ropes. Months turn into years, and those years create a professional identity. I'm a teacher. I'm an engineer. I'm a designer. That label becomes a lens, and changing it feels like rewriting your entire story, which is why people stay in roles long after the excitement has faded. They've been saying yes to it for so long that no feels like betrayal. But here's the truth that often gets lost. Your past yeses don't own your future. Just because you've been consistent up to this moment doesn't mean you're obligated to keep walking the same path. Consistency is a tool, not a prison. It can work for you or it can work against you, depending on whether the path you're on still matches the person you want to be. One of my favorite examples of using this principle for positive change comes from a woman I met during a seminar. She wanted to run a marathon but had never been athletic. The idea of 26 miles terrified her, so she decided to start in the smallest way possible. Every morning she would walk to the end of her street and back. That was it. No pressure, no grand goal, just a short walk. Weeks later, she added a little jog at the end. Months later, she was running a mile without thinking about it. A year later, she crossed the finish line of her first marathon. When I asked her how she did it, she smiled and said, I just kept saying yes to the next step. This is why the consistency principle is so powerful. It's not about manipulation, it's about momentum. Every yes is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. If you want to change your life, change the direction of those votes. Instead of saying yes to things that drain you, say yes to things that align with your values, your goals, and your vision for the future. But to do that, you have to become aware of the questions life is constantly asking you. Every invitation, every opportunity, every decision is a question. Do you want to be the person who does this? When you say yes, you're not just agreeing to the action, you're agreeing to the identity it represents. That's why the small yes matters so much. It sets the tone for all the yeses that follow. And here's a challenge for you. Starting today, pay attention to your first yes of the day. It might be checking your phone before you're out of bed. It might be eating something quick and unhealthy for breakfast. It might be procrastinating on the thing you told yourself you'd do. That first yes sets a pattern. Change that one yes, and you change the chain that follows. You can also use this with people you care about. If someone you love is struggling to make a big change, don't push them toward the giant leap. Invite them into a tiny, manageable step they can't say no to. Let them feel the ease of that first yes. Then watch how their own desire to stay consistent carries them forward. The change will feel like theirs, because it will be. And here's the final truth I want you to remember. The strongest yes isn't the one you pull out of someone. It's the one they arrive at on their own because it matches who they believe themselves to be. When you understand that, you stop pushing and start guiding. You stop forcing and start inspiring. So the next time you find yourself wondering why you, or someone else, said yes without thinking, remember this. It probably wasn't about the moment at all. It was about the moments before it, the identity behind it, and the quiet but powerful need we all have to be consistent with who we think we are. If you want to change the answer, change the question. If you want to change the direction of your life, start by changing the smallest yes you give each day. Because in the end, the life you live is built on the yeses you've given. Choose them with care, and they will lead you exactly where you're meant to go.